But let's get the thoughts of somebody who worked for the last administration for the Trump White House, Dr Sebastian Gorka, who joins us now to reflect on what Joe Biden may say, but also, Seb Gorka, how he says it. This is a major, major challenge. We talked about Afghanistan, the fall of Kabul being a massive challenge that many people feel Joe Biden failed. This is even bigger.
This is catastrophic, Colin. Thank you for having me. Think of the fact that we are seeing footage right now of strategic bombers, of fighters over civilian tower blocks in the capital of an erstwhile free nation. And not just a nation that some people can say, well, it's irrelevant, it's far away. Ukraine borders NATO nations. There are countries in the alliance that the UK, that the US is a part of, that are literally right next to a nation under bombardment today, with civilians in the underground, sheltering in place. We haven't seen anything of this ilk since 1945. We thought this taboo had been put to bed, that nations can aggrandize their territory through the use of force. It happened under the Obama administration with Crimea. Now, under his former deputy, Joe Biden, it is happening again. And we knew this would happen. Why? Because when the West is weak, when there isn't robust leadership from the White House, for example, then bad guys do this kind of thing. They make hay while the sun shines. And let me be clear to my fellow conservatives, and we have a clique here in the US who say it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter to us. Wrong. Go back to your childhood. Go back to the school playground. When a bully wasn't challenged, when a bully was allowed to get away with bullying, the whole atmosphere changes, and they will continue to bully those around them. So the speeches from both Boris and Starmer were impressive, but we need real leadership from the whole Western Alliance right now, Colin.
It's one of those days, Seb Gorka, where, you mentioned going back to your own childhood. I woke up to the news, as so many people did this morning, and actually I was thrown back to thoughts of my own childhood. I'm part of that generation, I suppose, in the 1970s who still sort of felt they grew up under the shadow of the atomic cloud, and having nightmares about having 4 minutes to get under the stairs and all the rest of it, protect and survive, nuclear holocaust. Yes. The Cold War felt very real, and it feels like it's restarting today.
Yeah, look, I think we're about the same age. I'm a child of the Cold War. I grew up under Maggie Thatcher's Britain, one of the greatest leaders of the modern age. But I'm also the child of refugees who escaped communist Hungary in the revolution of 1956, a tiny nation of 10 million people who saw the Soviet tanks roll in to crush that free nation, which resulted in, and let's just be clear here, Colin, the ramifications for the whole world. Just Hungary in 10 days, when that revolution was crushed in 1956, saw the refugee wave of more than 200 million people fleeing to the West. Two of them, my parents, who ended up in West London. This is now the Ukraine, a much, much larger nation on the borders of NATO. So the ramifications in terms of oil prices, refugee influx, and other countries as well. One last thing, if you'll allow me. Putin gave this verbal diarrhea faux history lecture 2 days ago to prep the battlefield, where he said, well, Ukraine has never been an independent country. It's part of Russia. Colin, he's done the same thing with the Baltic states. He said the same thing about Poland. So lest we think this is just a storm in a teacup and one country and he's over it. No, this is the former KGB colonel who has gone on record more than once to say the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the last century was the loss of the Soviet Union, and that is what he dreams of recreating.
Does it fall to us to encourage the Ukrainians to keep on fighting to the bitter, bitter, bloody end, even at the potential cost of, who knows, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives? I hate to say this, but from a purely humanitarian point of view, is not the shrewdest thing to do now in terms of saving lives to say to Zelensky, to say to Kiev, raise the white flag. You can't possibly win this war. They've got the air supremacy. They've got more troops. They've got a bigger army. And then at that point, say to Putin, Ukraine's gone, but you will go no further. We are moving up divisions into Hungary, into Romania, into Poland, into Estonia.
It's not our job to tell them how long to fight, because we are not the elected government of the Ukraine. We can give impassioned speeches encouraging the Ukrainians, but I don't think they need much encouragement. They are being raped right now. Their territory is being raped. They have a very proud record of fighting Russians in the forests for decades after they were taken over. So they will fight with or without our encouragement. What we need to do is what you said. We need to bolster NATO nations. We need to arm Ukraine through Hungary, through bordering nations. We need to give them as much lethal force that they need to fight for themselves, and make sure that Russia understands that there is a tripwire, and that tripwire is any NATO nation. But provide Ukraine with lethal weapons, a lot, not helmets. Germany shipped them helmets. It's like a bad Monty Python sketch. And also provide them through the requisite channels with the intelligence they need to actually target the Russian forces that are currently bombarding them. That's the minimum we need to be doing, Colin.
Always good to talk to you. Really appreciate your perspective today. For now, thanks very much indeed.